There are people who enter your life briefly, but leave a mark so deep that time cannot erase it. For Sally Field, Robin Williams was exactly that kind of person. The world celebrated him as a comic genius, a man whose mind moved faster than anyone could follow, whose humor could fill an entire stadium with laughter. But Sally knew something quieter and more profound about him. She knew the man who existed in the spaces between the jokes, in the silent moments when no camera was watching and no audience was waiting. And years after losing him, she felt compelled to share that truth with the world, because she believed the world deserved to know who Robin Williams really was. Their paths crossed in the early months of 1993 during the production of what would become one of Hollywood's most treasured family films. Mrs. Doubtfire was a story built on love, specifically the fierce, unconditional love of a father who refused to be pushed out of his children's lives. Robin Williams was cast as Daniel Hillard, a man so devoted to his kids that he reinvented himself entirely, disguising himself as a warm and wonderfully eccentric Scottish nanny just to remain close to them. Sally Field played Miranda, his former wife, a woman trying to protect her family and rebuild her life while navigating the complicated emotions of a painful divorce. On the surface, it was a comedic role in a commercial film, but Robin never treated it that way. From his very first day on set, he approached the material with the seriousness of someone who understood that great comedy is always rooted in genuine human experience. He wasn't there to perform tricks or collect a paycheck. He was there to tell a story about love and loss and the desperate lengths a parent will go to for their children. That commitment, invisible to audiences but unmistakable to those working alongside him, was the first thing that truly impressed Sally Field. Working with Robin was unlike anything she had experienced before. He had developed a method that was uniquely his own, a two-phase approach to every scene that kept everyone on their toes. In the early takes, he was disciplined and focused, delivering the scripted material with precision and care. He listened to the director, respected the structure, and gave the production team exactly what they needed. But once those foundational takes were secured, something extraordinary happened. The discipline remained, but the boundaries dissolved. He would begin to explore, testing new ideas, discovering unexpected comic angles, following threads of inspiration wherever they led. The set would come alive in a completely different way. Crew members who had been focused on their technical tasks would find themselves stifling laughter. Fellow actors would be caught genuinely off guard, their surprise entirely real. Sally Field found this process not disorienting but liberating. As an actress deeply committed to emotional truth, she discovered that Robin's unpredictability was actually a gift. It forced her to abandon any reliance on pre-planned responses and simply exist in the moment. When Robin surprised her, her reactions were genuine. When he pushed the scene in an unexpected direction, her character followed authentically. The result was a kind of screen chemistry that cannot be manufactured or rehearsed. It can only emerge when two skilled performers trust each other completely and allow themselves to be fully present. Director Chris Columbus recognized what was happening and adapted accordingly. He deployed multiple cameras during their scenes together, understanding that Robin's creative energy was too fluid and spontaneous to be captured reliably from a single perspective. Every angle needed to be covered because every take produced something different and potentially extraordinary. It was an unusual approach, but it reflected a deeper truth about Robin's gifts. He didn't repeat himself, not because he was inconsistent, but because his imagination was genuinely inexhaustible. Between takes, the real Robin emerged even more clearly. He was a man of remarkable attentiveness, someone who moved through the world with his eyes and heart wide open. While many actors of his stature remained focused on their own performance and comfort, Robin circulated. He talked to the camera operators and the sound technicians. He remembered the names of the catering staff and asked about their weekends. He noticed when someone seemed tired or stressed or discouraged, and he responded to those observations not with grand theatrical gestures, but with small, genuine acts of care. A quiet word here, a moment of focused attention there. A joke delivered not to entertain a crowd, but to lift one specific person who needed it. This quality, this extraordinary capacity to truly see individuals rather than audiences, would reveal itself most powerfully during one of the most difficult days of Sally Field's professional life. The filming of Mrs. Doubtfire was proceeding normally when Sally received news that devastated her. Her father had died. He had been in a nursing home for years following a stroke, and while his passing had not been entirely unexpected, grief rarely respects preparation. The news hit her like a physical blow. Sally Field had spent decades building a reputation for professionalism and emotional resilience. She was not someone who fell apart easily. So she did what felt natural. She steadied herself, walked back onto the set, settled into the camper near the courtroom filming location, and told herself she would continue working. She would act through the pain, the way she had always done with everything difficult. She would be strong. Robin Williams saw through it immediately. He hadn't been told anything. No one had informed him of what had happened. But he looked at Sally Field, and he knew. Something in her posture, her eyes, the particular quality of her stillness told him that she was carrying something heavy and trying to carry it alone. He walked over to her without hesitation, spoke quietly, and asked her directly whether she was all right. When she told him about her father, his response stripped away every layer of Hollywood professionalism and celebrity status. He didn't express polite sympathy and return to his trailer. He didn't offer kind words and then hand her off to someone else. He took immediate, practical action. Despite being the film's lead actor and one of its producers, despite carrying enormous personal responsibility for the production's progress, he went straight to Chris Columbus and insisted that the shooting schedule be rearranged. Sally needed to leave. Everything else could wait. And so it was done. Scenes were reordered, adjusted, and reorganized around her absence. While she sat with her grief and made the necessary calls to her family, the rest of the cast and crew adapted and continued without her. She did not have to perform that day. She did not have to pretend. Robin had made certain of it, not because it was his responsibility, but because he could not imagine doing anything else. Sally has reflected on that moment many times in the years since. She describes it as one of the clearest windows she ever had into who Robin truly was beneath the persona. He possessed what she called a rare sensitivity, an almost instinctive understanding of other people's emotional states that went far beyond normal human empathy. He didn't just sympathize with pain. He felt it, recognized it, and responded to it as though it were his own. This compassion extended well beyond the boundaries of any film set. Throughout his life, Robin Williams used his extraordinary platform to advocate for and support those who had no platform of their own. He was a co-founder of Comic Relief USA, which channeled millions of dollars toward fighting homelessness across the country. He appeared at veterans' hospitals, children's wards, and community events, not as a celebrity making a scheduled appearance, but as a human being who genuinely wanted to connect. His friend Christopher Reeve, left paralyzed after a devastating accident, once described the moment Robin appeared at his hospital room, disguised as a ridiculous Russian doctor demanding to perform a medical examination. It was the first time Reeve had laughed since the accident. It was Robin's way of telling his friend, without sentiment or speech-making, that life still contained joy and that he was not alone in facing what lay ahead. These stories, and there were many of them, most never publicized, form a picture of a man whose public persona, remarkable as it was, represented only the outermost layer of who he actually was. The performances, the characters, the legendary improvisations were all real and all extraordinary. But they were expressions of something deeper, a fundamental orientation toward other human beings that was rooted in love and sustained by an almost painful sensitivity to the world around him. That sensitivity, it turned out, was both his greatest gift and his most profound vulnerability. In 2014, Robin Williams began a rapid and frightening decline. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a diagnosis that terrified him, not only because of what the illness meant physically, but because it threatened the very faculties that had defined his entire life. His quick mind, his verbal agility, his physical expressiveness, these were not merely professional tools. They were how he experienced and engaged with the world. The thought of losing them was unbearable. What no one knew at the time, what could only be discovered after his death through careful medical examination, was that the diagnosis itself was wrong. Robin Williams was not suffering primarily from Parkinson's disease. He had Lewy body dementia, one of the most aggressive and least understood brain disorders in modern medicine. It had been causing his symptoms all along: the confusion, the fear, the memory lapses, the paranoia, the crushing depression, while remaining undetected and misidentified. He had been fighting desperately to make sense of something that had no name he could find, no map he could follow. On August 11th, 2014, the world learned that he was gone. The grief that followed was unlike almost anything in recent memory. Global, immediate, deeply personal. People who had never met him wept. Celebrities and ordinary fans alike struggled to articulate what his loss meant, because it meant something different and specific to each of them. Billy Crystal, speaking through tears at the Emmy Awards, captured something essential when he said that Robin had made people laugh harder than they thought possible. Whoopi Goldberg said his absence felt like losing part of herself. Former President Obama remembered him as someone who had touched every dimension of human experience. For Sally Field, the loss was profoundly personal. She lost not just a colleague or a creative partner, but a friend, someone who had seen her clearly in one of her most vulnerable moments and responded with nothing but love. She carries his memory gently but firmly, and when she speaks about him, there is both sorrow and gratitude in her voice. Sorrow for the pain he carried so privately. Gratitude for the gift of having known him. Robin Williams left behind films and performances that will never lose their power to move and delight. But his truest legacy is not found on any screen. It lives in the countless moments, large and small, public and intensely private, when he chose to see the person in front of him and give them exactly what they needed. That capacity for genuine human connection, freely and generously offered, is what Sally Field wants the world to remember. Not just the laughter, extraordinary as it was, but the love that made the laughter possible, and the quiet courage of a man who gave so much of himself to others while quietly carrying burdens the rest of the world couldn't see. He was, in the truest and rarest sense, one of a kind.